All right. So last Zoom call, fundamentals and breakdowns for the week. First, I want to start off by just giving praise to every single individual in this community who is putting in the elbow grease to make a difference in their life, right? You guys are a part of a very small percentage of individuals that are actually here trying to make a difference. And regardless if you're fully successful or not, you are still trying. And the people that are already successful in this community, allow that to motivate you guys so that way you understand that it is possible to achieve with the information that we are providing in this community, myself, Scalper, Aqua, and just all the info that we share. And of course, all the researchers in this community keeping everybody at bay with what's going on in the markets, giving you guys access to institutional information, doing these breakdowns, keeping you on the loop with the fundamental reports. This community, compared to where we're at now, and then zooming out and looking at, 5 years from now, even 2030 is going to be on steroids, right? With people who are successful, people who are passing challenges, people who are taking payouts, even in some of our investment portfolios, when we actually see a crypto bull run. This is the part, this is honest to God, probably one of the best communities to be a part of, considering the future that we're headed into, right? Where digital skills and understanding market dynamics and just being a part of a global network of individuals who are locked in is going to become very important. So this week, as we wrap up the week, taking a look back, we had three students this week pass challenges again. It's like week after week after week in this community. And we had two members take payouts. So I always want to give a shout out to those individuals just to show that this is not a community that flexes Lamborghinis and freaking gold watches, even though freaking Scalper bought himself a freaking $35,000 watch the other day. I feel like that's the first time in this community that we've ever flexed something materialistic, right? But it's well deserved. But this just goes to show that there's real people, normal individuals that work the 9 to 5 job, that are tapped into what it is that we're teaching here and that are making it work for themselves. So AP, of course, one of the CYPRX OGs, passed another 150K account last night. So that was great to see. We had A Bizzle, who actually had something crazy happen to him a couple of months ago. Somebody hacked his Discord accounts. He had to completely restructure everything, but nonetheless, he got his first payout. He's been a CyberX OG for some time now. I believe he's been a part of this community for well over 2 to 3 years. First payout just yesterday, which is so great to see. And again, even though you're a little bit doubtful in the terms of the size of your payout, $600, that's still a substantiating amount of money. Some people have to go and work 40 hours a week to make $600. So that's just phenomenal that you've built the skill in this community in order to pull that type of money from the market. Angel, one of our traders who's literally only been a CyberX 2.0 member for less than a year now. He joined in August 2025, has now had two more payouts. That's three payouts total over, I believe this one 2000, that one was 3000, the other one he had was 4000, so almost $10,000 taken from the market in less than a year, which is just again insane to see. Then we had, all right, so that's A Bizzle. Let's go. We had, of course, Jordan, who I had the pleasure of meeting in person in September last year, passed another 50K account. And then back to Angel. He has now fully passed 5 funded accounts on Top Step. So, just allow this type of stuff to be your guys' and gals' motivation to let you all know that if you take your time, if you focus on risk management, you show up every day, even on the days that it takes, a tremendous amount of effort and motivation to show up, especially on those days where your personal life conflicts with your trading environment and things might not be going as according to plan, that it is possible for you guys to come out on the other side of success. All right. And that this community is part of the literally 1% of individuals who are actually successful in these markets, considering all the retail hype and garbage that's surfaced on the internet. So what a great way to end our week, just seeing all these screenshots. And as your guys' mentor, and I'm sure Scalper likes to see it as well, that it's not just your mentors progressing. It's not just me funded taking payouts, which I just had an almost $25,000 payout just today hit the account, which I requested 2 days ago. So that's my fourth payout from Top Step. I've pulled over $70,000 from Top Step since I started trading on Top Step last year in September. Well, last year in August, but passed my funded accounts in September last year, and then since then have maintained these funded accounts. You got Aqua, who's passed funded challenges, pulling profits. Of course, you got Scalper, who fucking knows how much capital he's trading. He made a $30,000 trade today alone. So it's not just the mentors in this community that are winning. It's you guys as well. And so pat yourselves on the back. And if you're not there yet, continue to strive, continue to stay disciplined, continue to stay focused. Don't compare your success to others, of course. Understand that you're in your own journey, you're in your own lane. Don't feel like you have to make as much money as the other guy or other gal in this community. Just understand that it's all part of the process, risk management, discipline, showing up when it's hard to, and just staying locked in and focused. All right. So breaking down my trades for today to try to make this as clear as possible with what I've been doing, considering that like Nasdaq has been on absolute crack cocaine. The craziest part about this community is that we have been tracking these institutional dark pools for literally days on days on days accurately, time and time again. So Scalper had dropped the institutional dark pool at the 28802 days ago. You guys can see this is from, I mean, going back as far as just Tuesday, May 5th. You could probably go back a little bit further and see when this institutional dark pool came out. This is from Sunday, May 3rd. So we had all-time highs on Nasdaq before anybody on the internet even had those levels. And we came straight up into those areas of interest during Asia session to the almost exact point. And then London session retested those areas of interest yesterday during their trading hours. Today, New York session had their piece of the pie. And the reason why I was taking these buy positions today is because we broke above the dark pool and we retested it to the absolute point. On that retest, I saw the opportunity for a buy. So I took it with a nice tight stop loss beneath the previous higher low and just rode that wave to the upside under good faith that the market makers were going to push price higher into a new all-time high after the retest of the dark pool. I'd say that honest to God, those were my confluences for today's trade. We saw a low violated prior to the move. And immediately following that low violated, we see a high violated. Actually, as a matter of fact, I had a DM with Al yesterday where I literally explained this exact pattern, right? This is a market maker liquidity grab and shift the momentum where sellers got trapped. The overall sentiment was still bullish. Nothing had changed. And so I was riding that wave. Eric, give me 1 second. Let me finish breaking this down and then we'll get to your question. But nonetheless, I saw that pattern. So you can see here overall, of course, higher time frame trend is still bullish. New York session tapped straight into London session lows here. We took out internal liquidity, tapped into the overall buy base from where London session had been buying from during their session. And then the uptrend continued and we took out the sellers prior to New York session and we continued to make bullish order flow. Following the higher low, higher high formation, we came back and on the retest of the dark pool, I entered with the market execution, simply took my stop loss nice and tight beneath the low, and then rode this wave up until roughly about, I'd moved my stops up into profit underneath if I was trailing all these higher lows. And so this last higher low right here, this pullback is what took my trade out. And then that buy position was done for the day. Okay. So very simplistic, riding the momentum, using the dark pools as a supportive area after seeing that retest and using a trade execution order to enter into the market. Seeing the momentum was still bullish after we had this sell volume engulfed by buyers, a previous high broken, and then a higher low where the spring came in after that. And you can clearly see that price was also above the EMAs. Right. So that was literally my confluences for the buys today. Eric, go ahead with your question if you have something before we go into the sells.
Yes, sir. So I was on the 15-minute time frame this earlier this rising, and I messed up with my analysis when I was looking at it because to me what I was looking at was all right. Well, it looks like New York session is getting passed at a premium, so I'm like I don't see it buying right now because it retested the dark pool in London session and Tokyo session, and it couldn't break above it. So it completely went over my head. for the buy. So when I start seeing everybody taking the buys, I was a little confused. I'm like, all right, well, why are we buying some here if we don't buy any in queue from a premium? Because we at least my train of thought was we would see a discount before price breaks above the dark pool, retest it, and then go up, and that didn't happen. So I got stumped out of my trade because I think on the 15 minute I saw a sell delta held instead. So the wick right there at London session, uh the higher where like the wick right above the dark pool.
So you were seeing something like this. You were seeing this as a liquidity grab, this most likely as the shift in momentum,
Yep,
and then
yep, and yep.
you were looking at this as the premium for price to
Yep,
go lower.
and exactly where you have that candle pointing down. I'm like, all right, cool. That was about 70% discount. And so when I dropped down to the lower time frame, I'm like, okay, well, let me look for the 1, 2, 3 again. And then when it came up, it instead of it coming back down, it kept going up, and I was like, all right, I missed it, and I actually got stumped out because I went in for a sale instead.
Great. All right, so phenomenal. The fact that you were seeing this is there's, in my personal opinion, nothing wrong with it. The only thing that I would say, right, is that
Mhm.
what we need to understand coming into the New York session and where you were looking to sell at is that the previous daily low had still not been taken out at this point. So you can see, remember that always the market opens here in this area prior to Asia session. And from there, actually the market was still making higher highs and higher lows. So here's the higher low, here's the new high. So we were hovering in this A to B range. London session, of course, got past price at a premium during their open. They pushed price into a discount from where previous market makers were buying from. They defended that area. And notice how price is still above the EMA. And so this is that same pattern that I was trying to teach to Al is that yes, it may seem like price is bearish, but what are the market makers telling you? They're telling you that they're absorbing sell volume, so lows are being violated. But after those lows are being violated, we're not seeing any follow through momentum or bearish price action. And instead, what we're seeing is a low violated, daily structure still intact for buyers. New highs are being formed, and after lows are being taken, price then creates bullish order flow where a higher low, higher high comes into fruition. Al, if this is not the same exact price action that I was breaking down for you in the DMs, I don't know what else is. But this just shows that the sell volume is still being absorbed by market makers, at least prior to the New York session. Things changed and have changed since the market open, of course. But just, Eric, maybe to kind of clear up some confusion, instead of selling here because you thought that this was the premium, albeit you're not wrong because this does look like a break in structure, you have to remember that the overall daily low was still intact. So even if price came down into this area, you'd still have to be considered a buyer for today, right? Albeit now, of course, that daily low has been violated and there was a clear shift in momentum up here, which we'll get into in just 1 second. But maybe that can kind of clear up some of the confusion today during New York session is that using the CYPRX 2.0 tracking methodology and looking at where London session had bought from, where Asia session had bought from, and highlighting those areas of interest for discounts, that could have kept you in line with the right directional bias for today at the beginning of New York session.
Okay, yeah, no, great. That makes a lot of sense because once I started seeing everybody else's trade, I went back and I reanalyzed the market, and what I failed to do was highlight that buy base right there at London session. And it's
Yep.
funny that I see that because I ended up doing that. I was like, okay, this is where I messed up at. I didn't highlight that buy base and see what price action would do once we got there. And then with the you saying that the daily low was still intact, that just adds more confluence to it and makes me understand my mistake even more. So thank you. Yep, that clears that up.
I'm actually over on my other computer, still in my sell position on Top Step. I have two contracts running. I'm looking to see if we can come down into the 28473 dark pool. Um, All right, so now let's transition into the sell mindset. How I was able to sell the exact, almost the exact top line at Nasdaq, and how I started to use oil as a hedge or an inverse correlation against what Nasdaq has been doing lately. So pretty much at the beginning of the week, I started backtracking oil and started to look at the volume and volatility in oil. Now, every single time oil prices have crashed, we've seen the inverse correlation on Nasdaq, where Nasdaq has continued to hit new all-time highs. And so today, considering that there was no real, like, in my personal opinion, reason as to why NASDAQ was continuing to push higher, because there was a whole bunch of conflicting fundamentals at the very beginning of New York session, a bunch of uncertainty around the Iranian tensions and bullcrap that was happening. I pulled up the oil charts and I had noticed that as NASDAQ was pushing above the dark pool, oil was also pushing down into a previous buy base. So over here on the right hand side, you can see this buy base on oil, or where oil had started to create the beginning of what I'm thinking is going to be a 1, 2, 3 pattern, considering everybody has gotten super excited about the peace negotiations going on with Iran and whatnot. We can see clear as day, oil left the structure high behind, violated a low, and then shifted momentum. This is the same exact pattern that I just showed you guys over on NASDAQ that sent the market higher. Well, today during New York session, as we started to push up into these new all-time highs on NASDAQ, I opened up the oil charts and I noticed right before we had this 10 a.m. fundamental release, which I'll get into in just 1 second, which also weighed on risk sentiment. Oil at the same exact time, coincidentally, was pushing into the buy base, right? And so over on oil, not only did we create a 1, 2, 3 on the higher time frame, so this you could think of as the hourly time frame. Here's the one, or the sweep of a low. Then the shift in momentum that breaks a previous structure high, or the two, leaving behind the base. And then price came down into that base. And then sure enough, when we revisited that base, I started to look for the same exact pattern. And we got that. Right when NASDAQ was trading at the high, you can see the time down at the bottom of my charts, 9:45. What do I teach you guys in the CYPRX 3.0 content about the time efficiency paradigms, right? That these market makers like to have clean numbers on their balance sheets when they're executing these trades for their freaking audits and whatnot. And they usually execute their positions in 15-minute or even intervals. And so right at 9:45, not only did we see NASDAQ top out, fundamentals come out risk off, which I'll go over in just 1 second, but we also saw oil tapping into the buy base and creating another 1, 2, 3 pattern on the lower time frames. So here you can see the one, or the sweep of a low at a buy base, which immediately shifts structure and takes out a previous resistance, creating a two, leaving behind a base. And then price retraces, creates the three. Buyers absorb the sellers, hold the base, and then oil continues with higher low, higher high formations, right? And so at the same exact time that I noticed this was happening, we had a fundamental piece come out at 10 a.m. So now that you guys have seen the inverse correlation on oil, which I've been using literally all week, anytime that oil has sold off, NASDAQ has been bullish. Anytime that oil sells off, excuse me, let me rephrase that so you guys don't get confused. Anytime that oil has sold off, NASDAQ has been bullish. Anytime that oil has been bullish, NASDAQ has sold off, right? So, or pulled back. Now getting rid of the oil charts. So that was one of the confluences that I used today to take the sell at the very top of NASDAQ. Another confluence I utilized, oops, why is that not going over here? There we go, were the fundamentals. And so I was paying attention to, remember I told you guys in the chat this rising, even though I thought I was going to have my daughters this rising, so I wasn't going to be able to trade. They're not coming until, actually, I think I just heard their mom's truck pull up. So they're probably going to come in here in just a second, getting dropped off. But I said to you guys this rising that if we see one bad or negative headline, we could see some aggressive profit taking, right? I said that to you guys this rising before the market opened at 8:14 a.m. And so we got exactly that. So right when NASDAQ topped out at 28,950, or around psychological level to the freaking point, we got this fundamental. And I didn't sell at the exact fundamental that came out. You can see at 10 a.m. New York Fed 1-year inflation expectations came out above not only the previous at 3.42, but also above the forecast. That's not good, right? That is not good for risk assets. Why? Because it does what? Puts the Fed in a higher for longer interest rate environment, creates inflationary fears. And so here's that fundamental report right here, the survey of consumer expectations that dropped literally at 10:05, 5 minutes after the data report came out. And so I wrote this here, breaking down for you guys why this would weigh on market sentiment. So, reading this for you all out loud, the biggest concern is that 1 year inflation expectations rose from 3.4% to 3.6%. When consumers expect higher inflation in the near term, markets can worry that the Federal Reserve may have less flexibility to cut rates aggressively if inflation proves sticky and troublesome. On top of that, unemployment expectations jumped to 43.9%, the highest since April 2025. That tells you that households are becoming more concerned about labor market weakness. Credit access also deteriorated, and people expect future credit conditions to worsen in the near future. That often signals tighter financial conditions in the coming months ahead, something that equity markets usually don't love if it accelerates. And this news, coincidentally, right, literally came out when oil was at the buy base, when Nasdaq was at a new all-time high at 10 o'clock on the dot. And so, with the fundamentals that dropped, and with oil being at that buy base and using it as an inverse hedge against what Nasdaq is doing, that's then when I jumped down to the lower time frame and realized that buyers were exhausting. And so you can see that here. Here is when the news headline here came out at exactly 10 o'clock on the dot. Here's when the report came out. Immediately following that, we see buyers exhaust. Buyers made an attempt to come back and defend and absorb the sell volume and immediately failed. After that, we see another aggressive sell volume candlestick. I entered on that bearish engulfing candle with a nice tight stop loss previously above the high. After my trade went into profit, I took it down right beneath the lower high here, and it was almost instant profit on my part. Now, why did I hold this trade? As we continue, let's break down now the next area where you could have executed a position where Scalper executed his position at. Right? So you can see that we had a shift in momentum. So the previous support or the bases were taken out. After you see the bases taken out, we don't see any immediate bullish absorption or absorption of sell volume, resulting in a new price leg higher. And instead, we see the opposite. We start to see a sell base or the last bullish candle before the down move that broke the support act as a resistance, where you can see every single time buyers made an attempt to push price higher, they failed. Another failed attempt, another failed attempt. And instead of creating another structure move to the upside, we create another break in support, leaving behind liquidity. So there's liquidity above these highs or internal liquidity, right? Buyers made one last attempt to defend at a previous base, which they made a slight effort here. But what you'll notice is that when we came back up into the sell base, instead of creating another structure leg to the upside, we start to create another 1, 2, 3 pattern. So we leave behind a support. That support is then violated. So same thing as above, so below that I just explained to you guys for buys. What do we see here? We see a sell base. We see a low violated. It then results in an immediate structure shift or a high taken, leaving behind another base. And then we come back for the 3, retest that base, and then it's off to the races, right? And at the same exact time that this happened, what you'll notice, you cannot make this stuff up. Look at the time. Look what came out at exactly 10:28 in the morning. U.S. cannot reopen the strait with unrealistic plans, senior Iranian officials say. And then the freaking market sold off, right? It's so crazy how all of this stuff coexists together. And 10:28 a.m. is exactly when the market was retesting the sell base, right? Right here in this area. So that coexisted today with what I said about how one bad negative headline and we could see some aggressive profit taking. And we got that today at the exact top on Nasdaq, and that resulted in all of this bearish price action today, or a nasty profit taking event. I'm not going to go outright and say that the whole entire sentiment is completely shifting. I would probably go outright and say that if we don't see continued negative headlines, that this is probably just going to result in a discounted buying opportunity for market makers to reposition after achieving new all-time highs on Nasdaq. But nonetheless, this was a great trade. I'm actually still in this position right now with two contracts on the table running. I'm going to see if we can drop down into the lower dark pool before I completely close this trade. But nonetheless, really great confluences today across the board.